Welcome back to the Holy Shiftball podcast, the show where we are discussing WTF is consciousness. Where the questions get bigger and the answers start to shift how you see everything. I'm Bethany, your energetic bestie, alongside my fabulous soul sister, Sharon. Hey, Sharon.
Hello. How are you, Bethany?
All right, Sharon, we're going to hop right into it. Today, we're diving into something that sounds like science, but shows up in our everyday life. It's called the observer effect.
Bethany, can you explain to us what the observer effect actually is?
Girl, the idea that the moment you observe something, you change it. So the question becomes, are you watching your life or are you shaping your life? So Sharon, who is on the show today to help us explain the observer effect?
Woo! Today we have Heather Zimmerman. She's a rare human who holds both a master's degree in applied behavioral analysis, and she has the ability to channel Egyptian deities. And by the way, Heather will tell you that both of those things are entirely logical. She's a former atheist turned shamanic healer, and she bridges psychology and deep spiritual truth to help people stop living from their wounds and start living from their soul. Her position is simple. You're not just watching the show, you're creating it. Welcome to the Observer Effect with Heather Zimmerman.
Hey,
come on in, Heather.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, girl.
Great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here. I can't wait to have this conversation. This is something I don't really get to talk about too much, so I'm super happy because it does really have psychological, things, scientific things, as well as spiritual stuff. So I'm stoked.
Well, girl, let's just break this down. And if you could explain WTF is consciousness. What is consciousness?
Oh gosh, consciousness it's so many things. So basically everything has consciousness, whether it's your desk, your phone, your person, your cat, the window, the air outside, everything has consciousness. Everything has energy. And that's the basic of, building block of what everything is. And so there are different levels of consciousness. Obviously, your desk isn't going to sit here and have a conversation with you, but you can still have a conversation with the trees and the plants, and everything really does have its own level of awareness. It just, depends on what kind of, again, that level that it's at. So, but for me, I think my consciousness is my soul. It's the thing that, runs my avatar, if you will, and is my soul that has gone on through so many lifetimes, is here for growth, and it's just that piece of the divine that sticks with me, right?
Yeah. Wow. Consciousness, like you say, so many levels. So now let's get to your specialty a little bit. In applied behavioral analysis, you're trained to observe behavior to change it. But in shamanic work, the observer is the intervention. So how does your brain reconcile two completely different relationships regarding human behavior?
Well, two things can both be true at the same time, right? That's, I live by the both and philosophy, where there's, especially when it comes to universe stuff, because there's so many paradoxes, there's so many things that two things can be true at the same time. So in the psychology aspect of it, you're observing behavior, but as soon as someone knows that their behavior is being observed, they change it to cater to that observation, right? Same thing for ourselves. Like, we put on masks, we conform to different audiences. It's human nature. It's what we do, right? And so then you have the shamanic aspect of it, where you look at it from maybe the flip side, for conversation, context, and you understand that when you're observing your life, you're making a conscious effort to interpret that in a certain way. And that in turn changes how that, plays out. And one thing that I like to talk to people about when it comes to this is about living in the present moment and creating a reality, right? So I wrote an article about this a while ago, and it's very fascinating to me because when you think about the past and the present not really existing, only the present moment exists. So when you look back at a past event, you're looking at it from your current lens, your current experience, beliefs. And so your interpretation of that past event has now changed. So just by observing it now versus then, you're completely changing the whole experience. So it's really fascinating to think about the observer effect in so many different ways. Even quantum science, like it's fascinating.
You, I'm fascinated by your, wow.
Yeah.
You know what, Heather, from your experience in both science and energy work, how does observation actually change the outcome in someone's, real life?
So like I said, if you look at your past experiences and you're like, okay, let's think about this semi-logically here. We're here to grow, we're here to learn, we're here to change whatever it is that the lessons we need to go through in order to become a better version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to observe our past behaviors, our repeated patterns, our repeated thoughts, and figure out how to learn what we need to learn from that to create the reality that we want. So you're using the observer effect to change past behaviors, to change limiting beliefs, to change all of these things, to really get through, wounds and traumas and programming in order to get to that state.
For sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Heather. So you've opened up so many questions. But you describe yourself as a psychopomp. So that's someone who guides souls in transition.
Mm-hmm.
When you're holding that space for someone, what are you observing that the dying person can't yet see?
Well,
and how does your observation, does it change the outcome?
Well, of course it does. But so this works on many different levels. And to be clear, psychopomp does help people cross over from the living to the dead, but it also helps cross many different thresholds. Living people crossing thresholds, people who are already deceased crossing thresholds. I spend a lot of time in cemeteries. I've helped dark entities cross over into the light. That counts too. So,
Wow.
but the concept is still the same. So you're observing again that client. What are their beliefs? What are their, why have they done the things that they've done to get to this point? And how can I help them understand what's going to happen? We're going to take that, crossing over from this lifetime to the other side of the veil, for example. So if someone's living in fear, if someone is living in, religious constructs where they've been programmed to believe a certain thing that may or may not be what their soul truly believes, it's important to meet them where they're at and appreciate and respect their beliefs 100%. But what I do is I offer another perspective, and I'm like, okay, well, let's think about it. And I meet them where they're at and try to explain how the universe actually works and to help alleviate some of those fears so that when they do cross over that threshold, it's, a little bit easier. It brings that love back into the situation that they may have been missing. So, I mean, it's hard to generalize because everybody's kind of in a different place, but any threshold that you're trying to cross, the whole point is to think about what's preventing you from crossing it, whether that's thoughts, behaviors, words, because all of those things have to be in alignment. So trying to get them to that space where they're like, okay, I feel 100% confident about crossing that threshold, and holding that space for them to do that without forcing beliefs on them or anything like that.
Heather, from would you say from, your work with the spirit beings, would you say when they cross over, what they see is what they believe, the belief system?
Yeah, absolutely. So you think about spirits who are haunting. Okay, like I got started in all this because I lived in a haunted house when I was really young, and so that makes you start asking.
That's interesting, girl. Wow. I mean, that's not like, you know, you just said that like so nonchalant.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know,
well,
by the way,
I
I
talk
lived in a
about it a
haunted
lot.
house. You know?
But yeah, so it makes you start asking those questions. Okay, well, if let's say you believe that, you know, you go to heaven or hell, which to me, that those are states of mind. That's not actually what happens when you leave this world. However, caveat to that, if you believe that you're going to go to heaven or hell, and we'll just take hell as an example. If you believe that you're going to go to hell, there's a space. It's called the landing space. And it's kind of like a loading area, because you know that people talk about living in a matrix, everything's a simulation. Well, when you cross over, there's a space, it's called the loading space. And if you believe that you're going to purgatory or that you're going to hell, that is where you're going to go. You're going to create that simulation to learn whatever it is that you need to learn in that, you know, environment before you can pass on and go to what some people call heaven. I just call it home, whatever. But you're going to create that space based on what you believe, because there's clearly something that you need to learn, a lesson, an opportunity for growth in that environment that's going to prevent you from going home first. But it's only because you believe that. If you don't believe you're going to go to heaven or hell or purgatory or be stuck here haunting, you know, a cemetery or somebody's house, whatever, if you don't believe that, then you won't. So again, even though we talk about so much about creating our reality here while we're incarnated, the same is also true when you pass over. So it's really interesting.
So, okay, so this brings up a question which isn't about the observer effect. Well, kind of, I guess it is. So you think that people create their reality, like when they pass over, our version of heaven is what we create for ourselves? That we're all not going to the same version of heaven or wherever we happen to go?
Yes and no. So if this is a little bit tougher, because everybody's definition of heaven is going to be different, right? So if you're like, okay, I'm going to these pearly gates, all of my loved ones are going to be there. Well, yeah, that's true. But when you cross over, you go to, we're all from the same universal consciousness. We're all from source, right? So when we cross over to the other side, there's actually a process that we go through, like an outtake almost, just like there is before we get here, where you go through your life review process and you see all the things that happened and stuff like that. But ultimately, you do go back to all your loved ones on the other side. They are waiting for you. And whether you want to call that heaven or just, you know, what happens, that's up to you. But that's why I use the word heaven loosely, but because heaven and hell, I think, are states of mind while we're actually incarnated rather than what happens after we leave. So heaven technically, yes, could be, I'm going back home. I'm going back to my loved ones. I'm going to my soul family, my galactic family, you know, all of those things. So yes, but also kind of no.
Fair enough.
Where do people misunderstand the concept and accidentally give their power away? You know, where are people, you know, stuck the most, would you say?
That's a pretty loaded question, because there's so many ways that we give our power away just every day and don't even realize it. Like, we are the magic, the magician, the creator, as me and my friend like to say, because we do ultimately create our own reality. But we have the power. We are way more powerful than we think we are. And so when you're not upholding healthy boundaries and letting someone take advantage of you, you're giving them power. When you're clocking into a job that isn't, you know, reciprocating the energy that you put in, you're giving away your power. When you're not standing up for something that you believe in, you're giving away your power. When you're in a situation, especially like we were talking about earlier with the things that are going on in the world right now, and you're following, I don't want to say like a sheep, but when you're following these principles and these rules and these things that don't make sense, when you have the opportunity to truly have your own experience, you're giving your power away. Like they say, there's two people living in the same city who are experiencing the same kind of things, but have very different personal experiences because their perspectives are different. One person might have, recognized their power and not been giving it away. Yeah. So there's so many different ways just in the day-to-day, like being with a partner that doesn't recognize you or uplift you, you're giving them power. Your kids, your pets, it's all about working on yourself and being truly self-aware and giving yourself everything that you need. Because as soon as you start giving that to other people, that's exactly what it is, giving your power away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Heather, excuse me, your philosophy is that you can't transcend what you haven't healed. Mm-hmm. So what happens when someone observes a wound clearly? They know the wound, they know where it came from, they know where it originated, they really see it, but they still can't move on beyond it. What's that observer missing, and how's the observer effect not transforming in that moment or in that certain circumstance?
So the one thing that I like to make sure people understand is that we have multiple systems that work together to create who we are as a whole being. So some people call it mind, body, spirit. Some people say mental, emotional, physiological, and spiritual, however you want to say it. So when you're going through this healing journey, you have to make sure you look at that wound from all of those lenses. So you want to look at, the emotions behind it. Those are your triggers. That's when, the universe is telling you this is something you need to pay attention to, and usually kind of comes first. And I'm speaking in generalities because everybody's healing process looks different, but usually that trigger is the first thing that tells you, okay, I need to look at this. I need to figure out what this is and get to the root cause.
A lot of people miss that.
Yeah.
They see a trigger just as an obstacle as opposed to, wow, there's something in that. Why am I reacting to that?
Absolutely. And you'll notice if you pay attention to those triggers, the situations might be different, but sometimes the root cause is the same, and it's just going to keep coming up until you address it. So then you have your mental part, which this is, I'm a psychology major, so this is one of my favorite parts, but really looking at why you react to those triggers the way that you do, why you have that sort of reaction, and getting to the root cause. But also the part that I try to help my clients with the most is going through those perspective shifts to change your reaction to those things so that they don't trigger you that way in the future. And then you also have your energetic, the spiritual part, which is looking at it from a broader perspective, a bigger lens, looking at the big picture, zooming out and being like, okay, when I used to get anxiety and start dwelling on things, I'm like, all right, I ask myself these questions. I'm like, is this within or without my control right now? Is there anything I can do about this right now? Is this going to matter in 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years? Okay. And that kind of helps you shift your perspective about what's really important and what needs to be prioritized and whether you can even actually do anything about it right now. People pay attention to things and always assume worst case scenario. And it's like, I haven't even heard the news yet. I don't know. Why do I keep going to worst case scenario? And then you have your physical part, the body, because when you get energy and it's stuck, especially from old wounds and traumas, if you don't address it, it can start manifesting physically with illnesses, diseases, injuries, all kinds of things. So you kind of have to look at the healing journey from all those perspectives, not just one, in order to truly get through it.
Yeah. Wow. If someone feels stuck in that same pattern, how can awareness of the observer effect begin to change that?
So one thing that I teach people is, again, as I mentioned earlier, about being mindful and living in the present moment and really having that level of self-awareness to where you can recognize what your triggers are. You can recognize your body's and nervous system's reaction to things and really, go within your body and learn what it's telling you essentially. And
Yeah.
so that's a really good starting point. But you have to have that, you can't be disconnected from your body. You can't ignore those signs. You really have to figure out what they are and how they feel.
What would you say operating unconsciously looks like? How, if someone's operating unconsciously, what does that look like?
To me, I mean, it could mean a couple things, but to me, the first thing that comes into mind is just being on autopilot all day. Like, there's so many of us who have given our power away, like we were just saying, who go through the motions. They wake up, they go to the gym, they get ready, they get their kids to the babysitter, they go to work, they look at the clock all day long, and they're like, oh my God, will this day ever end? And then they clock out, they go get their kids, they make dinner, whatever the case may be, but they're not finding any joy or passion or excitement. They're not living. They're just on autopilot.
Would you say that they're mostly, most all the time operating within that mental space, always in the mind, thinking, always, on the rat race, trying to figure out what they did, 3 years ago, what they ought to do, in the next coming 2 years from now, always pulling from the past and the future into the present. Do you think that's what unconsciously, operating would look like?
Yeah, that could certainly be part of that as well. I want to express this with some grace and compassion, because we're programmed to be that way. So it's not, I don't want to say we can't help it, because we can take our power back and really take control of that. But growing up, the way that, society works, what we've been taught productivity looks like, what we've been taught success looks like, that's how we're programmed to think. And so it's going to take a conscious effort to get out of that and really be able to do it differently. So yes, I think a lot of people do live that way, but we've been programmed to be that way. So,
well, like you say, we were programmed from a young age to go to school. You go to school at a certain time, you have lunch at a certain time, recess, whatever, you go home, you do your homework, you watch a little bit of TV, we're programmed from a young age to fit into a certain area.
But also, I think something that's not, in people's awareness is that, your body is the one that's going through the world. But if you're not aware of the frequencies in which your body is sitting in, you're being projected, bombarded through technology, through electronics, through all kinds of things on a lower, denser frequency level, a lower vibration that keeps you in that, state of fight or flight. You're just like, oh, and you're not aware of it because you can't see it, because we've been told and taught and trained that the only way it can be real is if you see it with your eyes. Well, we're talking about stuff that you cannot see with the human eye. But
girl, I
when
could talk about
you
this for
start to get
hours.
into your presence, you are able to sense, see, and feel.
Absolutely. And especially if you're an empath, forget about it. Like, you're already just getting it 1,000 times worse than everybody else. But then you tack on the food that we're eating and the stuff.
Yes.
You talk the EMF radiation.
Yes.
I'm gonna get a little controversial here, but like the vaccinations and things, the medication that they give us, like it's all it all goes into that programming where they're pumping us full of things that are not natural, whether that's frequencies, food, medication.
But also,
and Bethany,
go ahead, Sharon. Sorry.
And Bethany brings up a really good point about observing is also about staying in the present and feeling into it. It's not just about seeing with our eyes. It's also about feeling with our hearts and our souls. And how does this feel to me right now? How does this feel when people are, you meet Debbie Downer and Susie Psycho in the grocery store and they're freaking out around people with their carts and whatever. It's hard to, or it can be, if you're not aware of your surroundings and not observing all that time and staying present in that moment, it's easy to react.
Yes.
But if you're actually observing, going, wow, she's having a bad day, I hope it gets better. And then you just, bounce it,
but
let
also
it bounce off of
taking
you.
an observation of what thought processes come in, because when you're in the collective, I know for me, shit, I'm talking about, I can, like you say, Debbie Downer, train wreck Thomas.
Yeah.
And, before I meet these people, I'm fine. I'm not thinking anything. I'm over here just, with my sharp. But all of a sudden, these intrusive thought form, like, oh my God, I got to go mow the yard. And girl, I wasn't thinking about mowing no yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that brings us to, your aura and your energetic fields, because and again, especially for empaths, when you meet those people and they're emanating this lower frequency vibration, you're potentially absorbing that into your field. And so that can affect your thoughts, your behaviors, whether you realize it or not. So if you're like, one day you're like, oh man, I'm in such a good mood, and you run into train wreck Thomas, I like that one. And all of a sudden you're like, man, why am I angry? Like, I wasn't angry.
All of a sudden you're just like, I'm frustrated. I'm aggravated.
You're absorbing that frequency from your environment, and you have to find ways to protect yourself. And that again brings us back to not giving your power away. That includes being aware of your own energetic field and what you're broadcasting, as well as absorbing.
Observing in the moment, staying present at all times, and observing with your eyes, your ears, and your heart.
But also the power of intention, when you know and feel and think and believe that you are the most powerful being, and everything that you touch, what's the greatest piece of technology to harness information is water. Your water, your body. You can program the water within your cells, within your body, within your glass to always benefit you. So it's just like, but we weren't taught with these tools, and it takes, a higher state of awareness and ready to change your life to be able to, start to facilitate those tools in which you have. And that's the power of your heart and your mind, and the power of intention to
absolutely. I bless every meal and every glass of water, because it holds energy, and you can.
Well, your body's made of it too. So how interesting if you start talking to that, you start programming those molecules to start to vibrate in a way that is healing, that is fun, that is exciting, instead of saying, oh my God, I'm pissed. I'm so stupid. What are you telling your body?
Yep.
Well, and we've discussed this before about why does dis-ease continue? Okay, if your body regenerates every 7, I think it's 7, or it could be 9 years, then there should be no disease. There should be no long-term problems.
Well, that's the thing. Like Bethany just said, when you get a diagnosis, or you get, have a disease, you make that a lot of us make that our identity, and your words are creating your reality. So the words that you put out there, the thoughts that you have, the way you act, if you use it as an excuse or a crutch for your behavior, well, yeah, of course it's going to keep coming back, because that's what you're attracting, because that's what you're.
But also too, we're programming the water molecules within inside our body. So those water molecules are holding the definition that we have of ourselves, whether it's, stupid, dumb, lazy, not good enough, unlovable, or I'm an awesome human and life is good. I love everyone. Everyone loves me. I attract the best. And like, whatever we think and feel is what we're programming into our body. And it's not just our cells, it's also the water molecules. And I think that's where the long-term disease comes from, because that water is programmed. So when a new cell gets created, the water says, hey, by the way, you have a disease. I'm not sure. I mean, that's very basic.
Well, I think through repetition, through the belief and the thought form, and someone, projecting that belief on that you're sick, you're dying, and then through time you take on that, and the water, the body, the cells, the organs start to take on that thought form and that energy residue, and you create it for yourself.
Exactly.
But it's so, it takes constant state of awareness to be able to shift that,
but also
that's just not how we were taught.
Right. But also all of that is exactly correct. But also what I was talking about earlier about the healing journey, when you have old wounds and trauma that go unaddressed, they manifest physically as well. So it's like a never-ending loop, a never-ending cycle, because you have these things that we haven't addressed, whether again they're trauma, limiting beliefs, whatever the case may be, programming, and then that manifests in the physical body, and then you're like, oh man, I have this disease, I have this diagnosis, whatever. So then, because we are programmed to think about worst case scenario, it's constantly in the back of our mind. So we're just perpetuating that situation for ourselves by programming the body, and it just keeps going and keeps going until you break that cycle.
Yes.
And even though, but then we're bringing the subconscious into it, because consciously sometimes, and I've experienced this in the recent past, consciously we've dealt with it, we've moved on, life's good, we're done. And then all of a sudden, whoo, it's back. And you're like, what the F is going on here?
We put my seatbelt on.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute.
Either.
But that subconscious, right? So we programmed our conscious mind, but we haven't yet reached, and that tells us we haven't reached the subconscious level, because if you want to know what's going on in your subconscious, just look at what's happening in your life, because the subconscious drives the bus, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
As you know. So it's we can think that we have changed this, delved into it, observed it and corrected it and healed that part of us. But then all of a sudden you get picked up by the head and you're like, what?
Well, and that's the thing. Healing isn't linear. There's always deeper layers. It's like peeling an onion, right? So, and like I said, you have to look at it from all those different lenses, those different perspectives, and really get to the root of it from all angles. So if you don't, it's going to come back up because you haven't, reached the subconscious.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Heather, we have come to the favorite part of our show. It is called the shit or shift segment. And what we're going to do is we're going to throw out some questions to you. You tell us if it's a shift, if it's, it's expansive. Yes. Woohoo. Or if it's total shit, that's programming. No, that's not it. That's not the truth. Get it out of here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question. When people start questioning their own thoughts instead of believing all of them, what is that? Is that a shit or shift?
That's a total shift. That's amazing.
Yes. Can you give me just a tiny breakdown?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, this goes into everything we've been talking about with the observer effect, and being self-aware. So once you start to pay attention to those things, now you have the ability to change them.
Yes, ma'am.
So the fact that you're now aware of your wounds means you're already changing. Consciousness alone is transformation. Shit or shift?
Consciousness alone is transformation, but it's not the whole transformation. It's the first step. So we'll say shift.
Awesome. Woo. Awesome. Okay, second question. If you're constantly focusing on what's wrong, are you being realistic or reinforcing the very thing you do not wish to experience?
Oh, you're totally making it worse for yourself. So we'll go with shit there. You want to change those thoughts, change the way you focus, go into that state of positivity, or else you're just going to go, it's going to be that continuous snowball effect and just keep getting worse and go that loop that we talked about. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty, Heather. Your ancestors' trauma is their story, not yours. So what happened generations ago can't possibly affect how you show up today. Shit or shift? Total shit.
I can tell you that speaking from experience and what I'm going through right now with ancestral stuff. Unfortunately or fortunately, I have been through a lot of things in my life that were generational curses that have continuously repeated in my family line on both sides. And I'm grateful for all of the shit and trauma and, nonsense that I've been through in my life, because it put me in a position where I could break those curses and stop that in the family line. It's carried over in your DNA. It's carried over in the energy. And it's, I mean, I don't want to get too deep, but, we have so many lives that it's not just the ancestors of this lifetime either, but that's a whole nother conversation. But you don't have to make it your responsibility, because the good thing about it is when you heal yourself, that ripples back in time. So you don't have to make a conscious effort. Just work on yourself and it will all fall.
Yes, girl. Yes, girl. Fantastic. Excellent. All right. This is my last question on the shit or shift segment. If you believe other people control how you feel, is that honesty or is that giving your power away?
Oh, that's 100% shit. That's giving your power away. The only thing that you can control in this lifetime is how you react to things, not other people. Don't let them do that to you.
It's his fault that I feel this way. It's all his fault, right?
Exactly.
It's your fault that you let him affect
Exactly.
you that way. And now that's a trigger, and we should get to the root cause of that and see why, so it stops happening. But it's your decision.
It's your choice to allow it to affect you.
Bingo. Okay, Heather, my last shit or shit question. The best way to live a soul-aligned life is to trust your gut and stop over-analyzing everything. Just follow the feeling. Shit or shift.
That's a shift. Yeah, absolutely. Never doubt your intuition. Learn what it is, what it feels like. Learn to trust it. Trust yourself, because you have all the answers within you that you need.
Yes.
You just have to trust it and find it. We all do.
Oh, Heather, you are just amazing. And you know what, Heather, where can people connect with you and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. So my website is divineascensionco.com. You can find all my links to everything. I have a podcast. I have a YouTube channel. It's all on there, a blog, free resources and tools to help my clients and my community. I have a Facebook group, and you can find all that stuff on the website.
Excellent. Amazing. It's truly a pleasure. Truly a pleasure to have you on today, Heather. This has been wonderful. My last question should have been, do you think that we provided our audience with some great information today?
I don't want to be biased or anything, but of course we did. Absolutely.
Well, Heather, thank you so much. I know I can speak for Sharon. We are sending you so much love from our heart to yours, and we appreciate your time today.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
I think Ron fell asleep there for a second.
Yeah. Sharon.
Wow.
Ballpark.
Woo! Right out of the ballpark. Home run, baby. That was really good.
Yes, that was. So be sure to like, follow, and share if this episode has totally given you a shift. And Sharon, who do we have on the show next?
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, next week we are talking about thoughts and where they come from. And we have a lady by the name of Lydia Urban on the show. She's a somatic and spiritual trauma guide. She's navigated addiction, abusive sexual relationships, and chronic pain and deeply rooted shame. So as a result of all these experiences, she turned inward and she started using spiritual and somatic practices to heal her body, rebuild her identity, and radically transform her reality. Just like we're saying, you know what? Go in, observe, heal. So she's an expert on thoughts. And so we're going to ask, where do thoughts come from? Do we create our thoughts? Do they just show up? And if we are watching our thoughts, who exactly is doing the watching? There's a question for the ages.
So be sure to tune in next Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time here on Rhode Island Broadcasting, or you can follow us on YouTube at Holy Shiftballs. And remember, Sharon, girl, when life kicks you in the balls, be sure to tune in to your Holy Shiftball podcast,
where we turn that shit into a shift.
See you next Thursday.
Bye-bye.